So many people say to me, after talking to me for a while about this, and the question pops up, and I'm sure it's the same in the story, in my story, coming to this. What about all the suffering people? What about all the suffering in the world? And liberation isn't about fixing the world or fixing pain and pleasure. It's about seeing there was no one here to suffer the weight of being an individual. We can't possibly ever make life perfect because everybody dies. There's nobody here to make life perfect, but say if there was, everybody would die. Everyone comes against losing things. Life is unreliable, unpredictable. People will do things that you don't want them to do. And life will take its journey. You can never fix. The answer will never be in fixing life. The answer to the end of suffering is seeing that there's nobody there to suffer. And it's not that this character actually doesn't give money or food to people on the street. Actually, this character tends to be on the side of very giving to people. I'm not saying that has to be what happens in liberation, but I'm just trying, liberation is nothing to do with the flow of life. It's not about fixing the world, saving the world. It's about seeing that there's nobody here that ever suffered. Pain and pleasure will always arise. You burn the body and there will be pain. You give the body chocolate and there will be pleasure. Falling in love is pleasure. Losing your car keys is pain. There's always going to be pain and pleasure. And we're not sure, like with the world, what's happening at the moment with melting ice caps, and we don't know what's going to happen with the world. And it's not about fixing the pain and pleasure. It's about seeing, because we can never. There is no one that can fix all this. It's about seeing that there's no one here that suffers, that carries the weight of the world. And in seeing that, pain and pleasure become very indifferent. It's not the same as when there's huge amount of suffering, because suffering is trying to avoid pain and get to pleasure. Life is very simple and very easy. And you won't have the highs of the pleasure that you used to have, because pleasure is dependent on believing that you've got your happiness. So the dynamic of pleasure is, I'm not happy, I'm not complete, I am a separate self that is not complete and needs to find my happiness in the world, needs to find it in money, in others, in the way people perceive me, in recognition, in love. I need to get them, and that will make me happy. So here, that's no longer believed, so there can't be the high of these pleasures. It can't be like, woohoo, yes, I got the love, I got the recognition. Because it's not believed. This is happiness. Existence, beingness is happiness. And it's no longer believed that life, the flow of life, will bring happiness. Therefore, there can't be the real downs of the pains. Because I don't believe that, say, breaking my leg is my unhappiness. It's painful, yes, but I don't believe it to be my unhappiness. So therefore it's not the crashing down of the pains. And pain and pleasure, they're nice. Like nice, not pain, but pleasure's nice and pain's not. Rather not have pain, but it's so indifferent. Someone writes to me on Facebook an abusive message. Someone writes me a nice message on Facebook. Yeah, that's nice, but there's not that huge between pain and pleasure. That dynamic falls away. Because that dynamic is the separate self. The separate self is based 100% on the dynamic of trying to get pleasure and avoid pain. Trying to get pleasure and avoid pain. And that's the whole dynamic of the separate self. That's the energy of this contraction. This, I am a separate self who's got to make my life happen, who's got to make my life work. And when it's seen through, that everything you ever wanted is here, in this, not in getting your sandwich from the sandwich bar at 12:30 when you're meant to, in your lunch break. Not in finishing work on time, not in avoiding relatives you don't want to see. It's happiness is here in everything. And it's not even quite that, it's like the experience is so empty. However, it's also so full at the same time. It's like nothing sticks. Just experiencing. There's no longer the interpretation. Thoughts still happen, energies still happen, but there's no longer the constant second, the interpretation. I have to have my dinner at 6:30, we've all got to sit down, and if we don't sit down, I'm going to be really angry, or whatever the interpretation. There's no filter. It's so radically alive. Even today, when there was a fear, it was like, but it's amazing because there's just no sense it's wrong. There's no filter of it. It's like fear, wind blowing in the hair, light. And it's just the rejection which is seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, which gives the impression of I've got to make life, I've got to create life, I've got to do this right, I got it wrong. But it's not about stopping that, because you can't stop that. There is nobody. There is simply life happening. This dynamic is the illusion. But it's not some individual's delusion. You can't see through the seeking patterns. It can be seen through by nobody, by emptiness. And this message is so brutal because I'm saying there is no hope for the seeker. Because there is no seeker. There is nobody in that dynamic. It's just a dynamic. The same as the way all this arises. It's so impersonal.